We start with a younger version of Joel telling his dad to stop beating up his own younger son for shits and giggles, before said dad just says, "You'll understand when you're older, pal, 'cause kids are well annoying, bro." But hey, maybe you will do better than me when you have a sprog of your own, Mr. Friggin' Know-It-All. Anyway, after the opening titles, we pick back up 2 months after Joel and Ellie initially arrived in Jackson, as Joel hilariously asked a local homophobe bloke to bake his lesbo daughter a cake for her 15th birthday already. And before you can say, the last time LGBT advocates demanded a Christian bake a cake, it didn't end too well for him, and SCOTUS said they didn't actually need to pack fudge for fudge packers. Joel just can't believe the guy managed to fuck up such a simple task through sheer dyslexic retardation at best and hateful snubbing at worst. So instead gives Ellie a shiny refurbished guitar for her special day, and proceeds to ruin her day even further himself by subjecting her to his incessant warbling. No! 1 year later, and Joel celebrates Ellie's next birthday with a trip to see the local dinosaur statue, as well as a pleasant day out at an old abandoned space museum.
Nice.
Anyway, after going full Buzz Lightyear and hilariously living the meme,
Bruh.
the pair bond in an old space capsule before jumping ahead another full year, as Joel comes home early from work to surprise his phony fakey kind of sort of daughter kid with another illiterate cake, but instead just finds her getting her freak on with a small transsexual lesbian.
What?
And before you can say, how are there so many muff munchers in one tiny community town of post-apocalyptic survivors? Joel just can't believe his teenage kid is a big fat lesbo and now experimenting with drugs, sex and tattoos, but totally puts his foot down about her trying to move into the garage in the middle of the night. 'Cause fondling small transsexuals while smoking pot and drawing all over yourself whilst under my roof just ain't fucking on, son. But soon relents anyway, given he's a total cuck, and agrees to let her move out later once he's finished fixing the place up a bit and shit. Now skipping ahead another 2 years, Ellie practices some questions she has for her Chilean father figure, like how were we able to escape the Firefly compound if you were carrying me all that time, and what the fuck were you doing with Joaquin Phoenix the other day? But he just says, shut your stinking gob, girl, 'cause you're 19 now, and thus a bona fide adult. So now you can come on patrol with us and totally entertain everyone with that hilarious joke book from last season, what you've now quickly forgotten about for some reason. Once out on patrol, Joel's rudely interrupted from banging on about enjoying daddy-daughter time by an SOS over the radio, and naturally tells Ellie to go home, given you're just a pussy old little girl who can barely move a mattress by yourself. And before you can say, why is he acting like she can't hold her own when she fought off a whole town of cannibals and Nazi rapey preachers last season? She totally refuses and accompanies him to the incident site, where they soon find a munched up Eugene, who's totally the husband of that alcoholic therapist bird from earlier EPIs. Figuring he has about an hour or so before he turns into a cannibal mushroom monster from hell and tries to snog a bunch of people to death with his wormy tongue like what happened to that test bird last season, Eugene begs to go see his wife one last time before he pegs it. Naturally, Joel just says sod that for a laugh, 'cause that's like super dangerous, bro, and I can already smell the fungus growing in your pits.
Disgusting!
And before he can say, well that was there before I got bit and I just ain't had a shower in a few days, you cheeky git, Ellie soon comes down with a bad case of suicidal empathy and says as a compromise, she'll go back and get his wife Gail, and they can then meet halfway between here and the camp to say their goodbyes and all that other gay shit, and just makes Joel swear that he won't do any bad things, like secretly go and shoot Eugene in the noggin behind her back, or totally ruin the Fantastic Four this summer. But he just says, well, I could probably manage the first bit, but no promises on the latter, pal.
Gonna fail. You ain't good, man.
So she heads off as Joel leads Eugenie boy down to the local lake, and just can't believe he's now boxed himself into a corner, promising he totally won't do what he was obviously always going to do. And this is exactly why you don't bring totally most pussy old women out on patrol, for fuck's sake. Now telling the doomed Specky Four Eyes to shut up waffling on about being terrified to die and wanting to be comforted by his life partner before he passes away into the long dark abyss, Joel promptly blows his noggin off as a pissed off Ellie totally sulks all the way back. And before you can say, couldn't he just have got his wife on the radio to say goodbye or some shit? Joel straight up lies to Gail's face by saying her hubby was a big brave boy and totally went into oblivion without crumbling into a cucked mess of blubbery tears and hysteria, whilst a betrayed Ellie hilariously throws him under the bus and says his story about how he had no choice but to kill him before she could come down is all total bollocks, bro. And this Chilean old-timer with spray-painted hair and whose promises don't mean shit is a big fat liar with pants on friggin' fire, yo. Naturally, Gail slaps the shit out of this phony faking do-gooding naughty murderer killer who tried to make himself out to be some sort of hero. As 9 months later, we return to that New Year's Eve shindig, where Joel once again gets to white knighting to try and defend the honour of two small homosexuals against a far-right fascist bigot guy, who does such unforgivable passive-aggressive microaggressions like baking cakes for gay lords but intentionally misspelling their names and shit.
Hate crime!
And after having humiliated Joel in front of the entire town, Ellie returns to the house and confronts him about whether or not he indeed lied to her in the season 1 finale, about how he apparently saved her from raiders who interrupted her special surgery session at the Firefly compound that one time. And for once, he's finally totally honest about how he actually went full Terminator on a bunch of random goons who were trying to fashion a cure to a devastating global pandemic using the blood of the super special immune girl was the key to everything. Naturally, she feels like he took away her chance to save the world and thus get a special statue made after her and shit. But he just shrugs and says, I don't really give a stuff, bitch, cause I bloody love you, girl. And if I could go back and have a second chance, then I'd shoot up them numpties all over again to totally save your ungrateful ass, including popping that chocolate Firefly bird who loved cosplaying that Zoe Washburn hoe from that prematurely cancelled Firefly show.
Wow.
And we end with Joel saying that she'll finally understand when she gets herself up the duff with a sprog. Well, if she ever gives it up for a man and can keep her hands off local transsexual lesbos, that is. And maybe then she'll do better than him, in a cheesy callback to the opening scene when his dad said the same to him and stuff. And although she says she won't likely be able to forgive him anytime soon, she'll at least give it a go, bro. Which is probably a good idea, given this is the last time they'll share any scenes together before he goes and gets a golf club to the noggin. And that's it. That's the epi. Though my favourite part was when the teenage survivor of an apocalyptic wasteland who grew up on canned beans wasted no time in bear clawing fistfuls of cake into her gob, despite such treats presumably being a super rare luxury in this type of world, and would surely want to be savouring and sharing every last crumb and bloody morsel. But anyway, on to the finale. We start with that Asian cuckboy fondling a stiff and solid tool currently penetrating his ex-girlfriend. Steady. As he quickly figures out that she's having his baby when she bizarrely refuses booze for the pain despite being a notorious alkie. Or some shit. A little later, Ellie returns after the group was separated a few epis back and just can't wait to go check on her unlikely lover who's technically just spent the night with her ex. And before you can say, so Jesse's just going to let a potentially infected person go hang out around a vulnerable pregnant girl who's still recovering from a leg wound without even checking said person for deadly mushroom bites.
Not a great plan.
Ellie reunites with Dina and promptly gets naked. But the network notorious for showing gratuitous amounts of nudie boobies now weirdly refuses to show any nudie boobies and thus potentially make the show worth fucking watching for once. Lame. Understandably though, Ellie's still a bit shaken after pulling an Abby on that Wakandan bird the other week and only managed to get the words whale and wheel out of her before she left her to choke on fungal spores. Much like my Tinder date did to me last night after only telling me about her yeast infection after I'd spent 2 hours gobbling her growler.
Shame on you.
As Ellie then goes on to reveal her tragic backstory about exactly why said Abby woman has it in for him and stuff. And Dina just can't believe Joel had it in him to go full John Wick, despite looking like a Chilean soy boy with spray painted hair and tash, and just wants to bloody go home already. The next morning, Ellie and Jesse head off to find Tommy, so they can all get the heck out of Dodge and indeed go home already. But first stops to bollock Ellie for lying to him about how his lesbo ex-lover is now infected with pregnancy and stuff. And says, if you think you're going to be some sort of awkward third-wheeling stepdad mum and inevitably try to groom my child into the rainbow cult, then you've got another thing coming, pal.
Yeah, you tell him, boss.
A little later, and the pair witness a young teenage seraphite getting stripped naked and taken away by WLF goons for execution. And a pissed off Ellie just can't believe that pussy old Asian boy cucked out yet again and held her back from doing what she does best in almost getting herself killed through sheer unadulterated immature recklessness. But naturally, he wants no part in this random gang war between fascist rebels and religious nutjobs, and will quite like to keep his intestines on the inside if he can help it, because he don't want to die out here in gay central Seattle and thus risk her raising his child to become a gender confused fairy clown or some shit.
Yeah, that's probably good, yeah.
Elsewhere, that Asian WLF army chief, what loves locking her sons down in infected basements from hell for shits and giggles, warns that chocolatey bomber chap called Isaac that there's totally a giant fuck off storm on the way, bro, and their key soldiers including Mel, Owen and Abby are all still missing and stuff. But hilariously, he only cares about that AWOL Abby bird, given she's kind of sort of hot and presumably fixing up his golf game on the side, and eventually reveals that he's legit grooming her to take over the WLF operations and their army, given this war is getting real spicy and they could both be dead by tomorrow morning once they go ahead with this assault on the Seraphite fuckers tonight. Back in the city, Ellie and Jesse once again hole up together out of a storm to escape inclement weather, just like in episode 2 when one of the characters went on to bite the bleeding bullet. And before you can say this'll end well, they get into yet another argument, and this time about her selfishness and how much he constantly has to save her arse all the time. When suddenly, frenzied chatter comes over the radio, panicking about some sniper fella in the area, which they naturally assume to be Tommy, because reasons. So they then head on out toward the exchange of gunfire. But immature Ellie soon gets distracted by the sight of a giant Ferris wheel, and begs her glorified babysitter to stop being a killjoy and let her have a go on the funfair already. And he just can't believe she's clearly learned nothing from their conversation 5 minutes ago about putting other people first and ahead of her selfish need for revenge. Because turns out the wheel must be what that Wakandan Nora was referencing whilst laying around choking on spores. And the whale meant the nearby aquarium, which is likely where the Abbey bird is hiding out and stuff. But Jesse just says that family is more important, bro. And we have to go save the ex-Ghost Rider fella what loves terminating people on the side. Especially given he's Joel's last remaining direct relative and also has an interracial kiddie with a literal communist.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
Naturally, she gets super triggered over him implying she don't give a stuff about people in the community who care about her. And weirdly just says,
"Let me tell you about my community."
And before you can say it's the alphabeti one and you're a raging homo, we know because you won't bloody shut up about it every fucking episode, they eventually go their separate ways. One to help out pin down Tommy, and the other to go and prove Jessie's point about how she selfishly puts her own arrogant need for revenge before the safety and well-being of everyone around her.
Go!
Anyway, Isaac and his army promptly ship out for war, whilst Ellie commandeers one of their boats totally solo, and thinks it's a pretty smart idea to sail out to God knows where in the middle of a horrendous storm.
So good for you, girl. Go on.
And in a shocking twist, what no one could ever see coming, she's instantly swamped by a giant wave and washes up on the beach of enemy territory, soon getting captured by the baldy Joker fellas what love gutting peeps like common hogs, and almost getting herself gutted like a common hog in the process. And screaming out, "Don't do it, bro, because I'm totally the super immune girl what was once the key to everything," sure ain't gonna save her now. And it looks like it's curtains for the fringe adverse fuckwit who could use her forehead to bounce moonlight out to sea for sailors should the local lighthouse ever lose power.
Bruh.
But in another shocking twist, what no one could ever see coming, she's saved in the nick of time by yet another Deus Ex Machina, and literally also by the bell, when the Seraphite village comes under attack by Isaac's army, and they soon just drop and forget about her quicker than that Batgirl trash by DC Studios a few years back. So Ellie jumps back in the boat and heads on back to shore, quickly rendering that whole bloody excursion the most pointless waste of screen time since anything to do with Tom Bom 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 in season 2 of The Rings of Boredom, and pretty much the entirety of Marvel's Echo series, or even the friggin' Acolyte shite last year.
Power of one, the power of two, the power of many.
Shut the fuck up, you cunt!
Now sneaking into the back of the aquarium without purchasing a ticket first to go see all the pretty fishies, she comes across two of AWOL Abby's group called Mel and Owen, and she demands they tell her where the naughty murderer killer of a phony fakey kind of sort of father figure is hiding out already. Cause she came here to chew gum and yeet some amateur golfers. And by God, she's all out of gum, bitch. But naturally, Owen says they don't know shit, bro, and promptly tries to reach for his shooter to get a shot off at this super rude intruder. But unfortunately, he just goes and gets himself totally deaded, and just can't believe he lost a shootout with a small lesbian, and nor can said lesbian believe that she just got 2 for the price of 1 somehow.
Nice.
Also unfortunately, turns out this poor Mel lass was totally preggers, just like that Dina bird what loves wasting copious amounts of pregnancy sticks in the middle of a resource limited apocalyptic wasteland. And now a dying Mel just begs Ellie to carve her up like a common hog and get bloody busy removing her fetus in an emergency C-section before this useless birthing unit totally goes offline and she... But she just says, "No chance, love, because I'm totally not one of these Seraphite nutters what cut people's stomachs open for shits and giggles, so you're totally on your own, love."
Oh, that's cold.
So after freezing up and just letting an innocent baby die in the womb of an already dead mother who wouldn't have felt any pain of the tummy mutilation anyway, Tommy arrives out of nowhere and says you should probably apply for a job at Planned Parenthood, girl, because they love hiring soulless baby killers, and that was some cold ass shit right there. Once back at the theatre HQ, the gang agree to wait till morning to head on home, as Tommy tries to make his surrogate niece feel better after letting an innocent fetus face oblivion just because she didn't want to mess up her nails or some shit, and says you need to now forget about that AWOL Abby bird and all the hell you went through trying to get to her, including the grown men you put into a headlock and stabbed up super easily with it barely being an inconvenience, and shut up about it already. And after making up with Jesse after all their previous arguments, he says he'll always come back to save his family, well despite a member of said family being the one who's now put this new father to be in harm's way, before the pair hear some commotion outside and immediately get a severe dose of FOMO and rush out to see what's going on already. And which turns out to be not much, given Jesse's instantly shot through the eye and indeed bit the bullet as kind of foreshadowed earlier. And Ellie just can't believe she's been ambushed by the same woman yet again for a second time and who's now yeeted two blokes she was fond of, nor that her naughty arch nemesis and queen of the golf course AWOL Abby has instantly tracked her down simply within hours of finding the cold dead bodies of her dopey friends.
Fucking unreal.
Naturally, Abby is pretty surprised herself that the kid she let live after presuming she had special needs has now come back on a revenge quest to revenge her fake daddy. Because that's like super retarded, bro, and pretty ungrateful to boot. So also naturally, Abby soon sets about fixing her costly mistake and finally putting a permanent end to the girl what her father was killed for, and to ensure that she can't ever come back to harass her and totally murder her pregnant mates in cold blood ever again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And even more also naturally, it again looks like it's curtains, with the winner of the least looks like the character from the source material competition, as Abby promptly pulls the trigger and we annoyingly cut to black. And before you can say, well, it's not really much of a cliffhanger, given Ellie's the only lead character left after they booted Joel, and it's highly likely that shot was simply Tommy firing off a shooter to save Ellie and distract Abby so they can both escape and shit, we cut to a flashback of a pasty white Abby wandering out to the balcony of a sports stadium that's now been repurposed by the WLF as a settlement. As a final caption confirms that this is indeed Seattle on day 1, aka the same time as when Ellie and Dina first arrived in the city back in episodes 3 and 4. And so season 3 is going to be the exact same story, but now told through the eyes of that random girl what turned up, mercifully ended Pedro Pascal's pesky habit, appeared in absolutely bloody everything, well at least for a bit, and then just disappeared for most of the season. Wowzers! How exciting!
Really? No, not really.
And that's it. That's the final epi. Though my favourite part, well, aside from the fact that just like season 2 of House of the Dragon last year, this barely felt like any conclusion at all and more like a decent penultimate setup for the proper finale in a week's time that now will never come, is the sheer irony of the one time we wanted Hollywood to change the bloody source material with the adaptations, and yet they instead do everything exactly the damn same, even though everybody hated it the first time and they bleeding well knew it for fuck's sake.
Fuck you!
And man, why did them Seraphite nutters even let her go? Does no one ever learn not to let people go and live in this world, given they all inevitably always return to bite them on the arse months or years down the line?
They never learn.
And by the end of all this rubbish, Owen, Mel, Nora and now even poor Jessie are all dead. Gah! Who needs infected mushroom zombies when you've got reckless lesbians and magically edited girls who love killing Chilean socialists to take out the remaining survivors?
Now that's what I'm talking about!
Blimey. They'll be putting said infected mushroom zombies out of a job if they're not careful. And honestly, why do any of these people even give a fuck about Ellie when she's rude and obnoxious to everyone she meets, doesn't listen to anything anyone says, and basically just does whatever she wants whenever she feels like it? Because she clearly couldn't give less of a shit about the communities and people that have taken her in, given she constantly puts everyone around her in life-threatening situations with her awful decisions, and also subjects their eyes to a mix of Buzz Lightyear and Sloth from Goonies. But anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Considering that bell thing, so you don't miss the roast of season 3 when it finally drops in 2 to 3 years time. Well, if I'm still around that is, and haven't been yeeted from the platform, worse than poor Ryan Roger Athay was last week for being reality based AF. Tell me if you like this show in the comments if you have time. And I'll somehow drive a boat what I've never driven before into the middle of a raging thunderstorm and instantly get capsized and almost drowned yet somehow survive doing it not once but twice because reasons are with you in the next one.